Hello,
Hi.
hi E, how are you doing?
Very well. Thank you so much for having me, Olamidun.
Thank you so much for being here today. It's a pleasure to have you in
You're
this
welcome.
space. You're one of Nexford's most prominent investors. You are also one of the most successful entrepreneurs that we have on the continent, having founded several startups, including Andela, including Flutterwave, which has raised over $225 million. Am I correct?
Yeah, we're still in the millions, yes.
In the millions. And also Future Africa, which serves to empower African startups,
Yes.
cultivate, culture them, and promote. So it's lovely to have you here
Same,
today.
super excited to be here.
Yes, I'm very interested in a few things about
Yes.
you. I want to know a little bit about yourself, about your education background, your own academics, what led you to becoming an entrepreneur yourself, and what do you think were some of your own key success factors that has made you who you are today as one of the most successful entrepreneurs. And then I also
You flatter me. I'm just trying to do God's work. But I think basically my background, I grew up here in Lagos, Yaba, not Lekki. I went to primary school in the Yaba area.
Okay.
And then when my family moved from Lagos to Warri,
Okay.
I left to go to boarding school at Loyola Joseph College.
Okay. In Abuja?
In Abuja, yeah. And a lot of my, would I say, core foundation really comes from that experience of being in Jesuit education for 6 years. I learned so much about what the purpose of life was and what people really need to be optimizing for, which is service to God and to others. And when I left, I went to University of Ibadan and Lead City University to spend some time working as an intern, as well as trying my hands on A levels while I waited to go to University of Ibadan. And then I got it was an interesting opportunity happened to me. So my father had wanted to send my brother to school abroad.
Okay.
It was something he always wanted to do because he was a science student. When my father got in touch with a prep school that would help my brother prepare to go to university in Canada, they gave him an offer, which was if he brought in another kid, they'll give him a discount of 25%. Yeah. So he was like, that's really good. So he sent me. And I knew this. So my mindset when I went to school was I wanted to make sure I got a scholarship so I wouldn't have to come back to Nigeria. So I did 10 courses in 5 months. I graduated well before I was supposed to. I got admission to the University of Waterloo on a co-op program. So I went to Waterloo. When I got to Waterloo, I worked the first co-op for the United Nations and then came back and got really excited about international affairs, media, journalism. Then I worked for the school newspaper. I led the school newspaper. And then after that, while I was doing that, and I was thinking about how to modernize the school newspaper, I had a friend who I'd met actually on the first day of school, but we had lost touch because he went to co-op in Silicon Valley. His name is Pierre. Okay. And so we caught up again by accident in the quad, and we became really, really good friends. And he was the one who introduced me to tech entrepreneurship.
Okay.
And one of the things I'm grateful to my Waterloo education for was Waterloo really was what I expected university education to be, which was an oyster, just like you. There was so much to explore. I spent time in international affairs, spent time running a 30,000 circulation newspaper. And the third thing, which was really my final thing, was it gave me an opportunity to get into tech entrepreneurship. So what had happened was there was this residence dedicated to entrepreneurs called the Velocity Residence. My friend Pierre was in that residence. I couldn't afford to be in that residence, so I just kind of went there every day and hung out with a lot of the folks like Vita Lake, like Eric Mikogolski, Ted Livingston, Michael. There's so many people who were Aditya, so many famous billionaires, right? That were now, now they're all big boys, and so it's crazy. So, I mean, I just spent time with them, And then I think Ted Livingston got backed by a venture capitalist firm for Kick. And then he donated $1 million of the money he had gotten from selling his shares because of the demand to Velocity, to the school, to set up the Velocity program. And that Velocity program was what I now went and built my first company in, which was booknetter.com, with Gerard, who's now CTO of Substack, and Pierre, and DJ, and a bunch of other folks. So that was how I got into, it all began in university.
You said a lot of different things, and I love it all. We started to talk about a little bit of your journey, and I want to take it back and just start to sort of penetrate a little bit of it so we can learn more.
Sure.
I think it's really interesting what you studied versus what you may be doing today in real life. I, for one, studied business all throughout. So I have a bachelor's degree in business administration, and then I pursued my MBA as well, master's in business administration. So I'm one of those people that basically learned in school what I'm doing in real life as an entrepreneur, as a business manager, and all of that. So I want to know a little bit about you, right, and your own experience. How much, I guess my question actually is, how much do you believe that education plays a factor in what people actually do in real life, specifically with entrepreneurs? So how much of it would you say is nature, just what you have intrinsically, versus nurture, which would be education in this sense?
So I think a lot of it is both, right? The reality is everyone is born with some inclinations, right? For me, my inclination was, being a rebel, not being the kind of person who just follows the rules, always being the kind of person who questions things, have healthy disregard for authority, and thinking outside the box. That was always the person I was. And naturally, my first inclination was to try and do that in establishment settings. So, trying to do that at the United Nations, trying to, I thought, perhaps you could reorganize something at that scale, and I learned, no, that's not really how it works. Or going into the press and being able was pretty much, writing opposition articles against school unions. And and that was another outlet. And I think ultimately what I loved about entrepreneurship was the ultimate outlet, right? If someone disagreed with you, you went and built a business to prove them wrong.
Right.
You made money, and you got to prove them wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. You do what you intended to do.
It's like I told you so, right? Like you don't need anybody's agreement. I mean, it's very different from, say, diplomacy, where you do need people's buy-in to make anything happen. Even if you have a great argument, it doesn't matter if people don't agree with you or they're not convinced by your argument. Or writing, where all you can do is write. Right? You can just rail against the machine, but you can't change it.
Right.
With entrepreneurship, you have the ability to say, I disagree, and I will show you how wrong you are.
Talk and do.
Yes, you can talk and do. So that's what I think the entrepreneurship was. And also there's also something said for the kind of entrepreneurship I do. So there's entrepreneurship you can be taught in school, which is, here's how businesses run and follow the rules of doing that. I think the kind of entrepreneurship I do is rooted in some level of demonstration and sacrifice, in the sense that you're building a business as a contrarian expression, right? You're trying, like if you look at Andela, when we started, the bet was, could you train a software engineer to It was a bet. It was a big bet. It was, could you train a software engineer to be fairly productive in 6 months? And a lot of people said no. And we said, we think we can. And when we did it, it created this big company. With Flutterwave, it was, could you build another payments company after InterSwitch? And a lot of people said no. And we said, we think it's possible, and you do it. And even now, we're in a small seed fund, grow really fast to become a $1 billion asset manager. And a lot of people say no, and we're here and we're trying to make it happen. So for us, the entrepreneurship we do is rooted in proving people wrong and making things right. So it's very different from, say, what you learn in business school.
Nigeria is not an easy place to do business, no, Africa in general. So I want to know, what is your highest high as being an entrepreneur in this region? And then you can also tell us what's your lowest low, your most challenging day ever being an entrepreneur in Africa.
I think my lowest low was, you know, I had an interesting issue with one of my closest partner banks, where, you know, because we had a misunderstanding, you know, it led to a very, very bad situation with them, and ultimately spiraled into the regulator. And it taught me a lot of very valuable lessons about dealing with older partners
and regulators.
And regulators in Nigeria. You know, we managed to resolve the issues, but I think there were a lot of, it created a lot of bad blood, and it wasn't a good feeling.
But tell us, what did they do? Did they come and lock up your space?
No, so thankfully,
did they freeze your accounts?
They froze our accounts.
Oh, wow.
They froze our accounts. They didn't lock up our space, but they froze our accounts with them, and it was my first introduction to, you know, dealing with the regulator in that way.
How aggressive they can be.
And how aggressive they can be. And it wasn't even clear what exactly it was we did, but that was my lowest low.
Being an entrepreneur.
But nowadays, you know, it's so funny I mentioned that, because it's hard now for me to think of that as a low. It's such a small problem compared to the ones we have now.
You've been groomed over time. You're used to the suffering.
Yeah. You know, used to being called up to Abuja.
Right.
So,
no, it's just another day in the office.
Just another day in the office. Just another day in the office.
All right, so tell us about your highest high.
My highest high was, in business, was actually, I would say, much more recent. It was the day Flutterwave became a unicorn. And not because I'm actually fully divested from Flutterwave, to be very honest, but I think that that event proved a lot of things. You know, when I was doing Andela, I heard from people that, it's only because his other co-founders are Oyinbo. I heard, you know, it's because he's exploiting people. I heard, you know, it's Oyinbo's money or whatever. And I think Flutterwave really proved to everybody that there was a market in Nigeria. It wasn't about anybody doing anything. And the fact that it was the first of many unicorns just opened up that floodgate, and the mental barrier, because I remember then, it used to be very, very common for people to come and say stuff like, Be Content being $100 million company in Africa, just Be Content. And it was kind of setting these mental barriers about where an African company could go or should go.
Yeah, it's interesting. Sorry, I just believe, you know, the more distinguished you become as an individual, the harder it is for people to be able to relate with you and understand. And you've gotten yourself, you know, way above the line that people are like, you know, is this really possible? Can it really be true? You know, but it is. What you're doing is real. It's, you know, we're seeing it in black and white. You've not done it once, you've not done it twice, you've done it multiple times, you know, enough to have that validation. Yeah,
but I think the other side of that conversation is also that you do those things to inspire people, right? So there's two reactions oftentimes, right? There's those who are like, this is not possible, black man. And then there's the other group of people who are like, it doesn't have two heads now. I knew him when I was playing with him in my bed, in my neighborhood.
Which is true though.
You know, so it's like, so you're more doing it for the latter, right? You're not really doing it for the former, because those people have mental limitations, so you can change it. But if you can inspire some kid from Kwara or Kogi to like believe that, okay, look, I can build a global business from Nigeria.
It's possible.
And you know, that's the real reward.
I love that. And they're right, you don't have two heads. You know, you're similar to the rest of us. So if you can do it, several others can do it.
Absolutely.
So with that, I would just love you to advise, you know, our Nexford learners, intending learners, the wide, you know, Nexford network, and anyone who's watching, you know, what advice would you like to give them, you know, especially for budding entrepreneurs who are looking for that lucky break?
I mean, I think, and it's something we never talk about enough. It's you got to understand the education that you receive is for service. It's not something that it's supposed to, you're going to find success in service. You're not. I think for me, that was the big mental swap from Fora, which was my second company, to Andela. Because when I was doing Fora, I was just obsessed with trying to make money. And Andela, I'm obviously Bookneto, I was obsessed with trying to make money. But with Andela, we're doing some really ridiculous stuff that it could make money, but that wasn't really what we're thinking about. We're just like, if we can transform the landscape of software talent in this country, you would unleash a revolution that would create companies and create venture funding and build a new Silicon Valley. And it all begins with talent. That was how we thought about it in 2014. And that ended up happening. So my point is, a lot of people are thinking today, I want to get a Nexford education, I want to be successful in business as the primary reason for them to do all of this. But you've got needs around you, people to serve around you. If you focus on their needs and you leverage the tools that your education has given you to be able to serve them, you will actually find out that you're much closer to success than you think.
So having been a part of Nexford from the early onset, being opportune to build the education strategy from scratch, even before we had a name, I got to see the vision that our CEO, Fado Altarzi, has. And I really felt the need that we have for a solution like Nexford in Nigeria. And so it's really important to me that we're able to bring Nexford to Nigeria. And now serving as a country director, it's beautiful to see that that Nigeria has become one of our most successful markets at Nexford. And it was even more beautiful for me to see African entrepreneurs and investors being interested in Nexford, and you having been one of our earliest investors on the continent. I want to know what brought you, to this table, and what led your decision to being a part of the Nexford family.
Sure. I mean, at heart, right, I'm an education entrepreneur, right? I think I just did a little stint in fintech to just share some of my experience, but my heart remains in education. And so when I saw Nexford, it really was a combination of a bunch of thoughts and concepts and wishes that I'd had for a very long time, but never really understood how one would be able to execute at the level that you guys have. And so for me, it was just impressive to see the level of execution and the preciseness. And then, I started sending people to Nexford. So I've sent 2 or 3 people now to Nexford. And they come back every time with rave reviews. I love the school. I really want to, so it's like, when I was offered an opportunity by my mentor to meet you guys, I guess she's now on the board of advisors, Madame Obi. Yeah, so I was like, yeah, hell, I want to meet those guys. I've been looking for something. I've been looking for a way to get to them. So yeah, I mean, this is amazing. This is a solution, right? It's going to solve a lot of problems. Like I said, we have an interesting situation in our country where we spend the most of our Forex educating our kids. It's the most ridiculous thing in the world. We literally export the most of our Forex. We export educating our kids, and we don't have to do that. We can always look for ways to get that global knowledge with the internet, and save some of our Forex rather than send that out to
and also
people
save some
in
of
other
our
countries.
knowledge.
Knowledge and Forex and talent, and expand the net of people who can be educated, right?
Awesome. So, well, thank you so much for your time today.
You're welcome.
Welcome again to the Nexford family.
Oh, thank you.
Our key African investor. All right, thank you.
Thank you very much.